Mason burst into Zachary's room, his face red with anger. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The new mistress had ordered him to go back and greet her properly after their earlier meeting. Mason already disliked her, and her attitude only made things worse. Zachary came out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist and water dripping from his hair. As he got dressed in a plain white shirt and black shorts, Mason started ranting. He told Zachary how disrespectful the mistress had been, and even said she might be hiding something. Mason claimed he had seen her talking to a young man on the street several times, which made him suspicious. Zachary only laughed and told Mason he was overreacting. But Mason wasn't convinced. He vowed to prove that the woman could not be trusted. At the same time, Mary was sitting on a plane, leaning her head against the window. She was listening to music and looking out at the clouds. She was on her way to visit her parents before going to California for some important business. Mary was a famous singer, and her absence from work had caused a lot of problems. Her manager called to tell her she had missed an important audition. Mary, annoyed but confident, told him to reschedule the next round for when she returned. Meanwhile, Sarah was spending a relaxing evening with her friend Vida. They were playing games and chatting happily. Vida talked about her daughter, Rani, who lived with her sister while she worked. Their fun was interrupted by a phone call for Sarah. It was about her music audition, which had been postponed, giving her more time to prepare. Later that night, Sarah woke up feeling thirsty. She went to the kitchen to get some water, but when she got to the door, she froze. A figure dressed in black was standing near her doorway. The person's face was hidden in the shadows. Sarah was terrified. As the figure started moving closer, she panicked and stepped back, losing her balance. She fell down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, Sarah lay there, weak and hurt. She looked up and saw the figure coming closer. The person pressed a handkerchief against her face and said something about her fate being sealed. Before Sarah passed out, she noticed a butterfly tattoo on the stranger's hand. When Sarah woke up, she found herself in a strange place, surrounded by odd-looking people. An old woman handed her a bitter drink and told her to drink it. Sarah hesitated, but took a sip. The woman said Sarah would soon learn the truth about who she really was. Sarah passed out again and woke up 3 days later in her own room. Vida and a doctor were by her side. Sarah didn't remember much of what had happened, but she felt deeply unsettled. When the doctor tried to give her an injection, she refused and asked for someone else. Vida, worried but understanding, left to find another doctor. Zachary heard about Sarah's sudden illness and strange behavior. He hurried to her room and found her vomiting blood. She was too weak to stand and collapsed into his arms. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Save me. I'm scared of death." Zachary held her trembling body and felt a wave of dread. Something dark and dangerous was happening, and the mystery around Sarah only grew deeper. Zachary's anger was boiling as he dealt with the man before him. His punches landed hard, leaving the man bloodied and bruised. Despite his repeated demands to know who had sent the intruder, the man stubbornly refused to talk. Enraged, Zachary promised a slow and painful punishment. After whispering instructions to one of his men, he returned to face the man, smirking coldly. Zachary declared that no one messed with what he cared about, even as the man scoffed, accusing him of pretending to love Sarah. Zachary quickly masked his reaction, giving orders to make the man suffer further, before walking away. In Sarah's room, she lay asleep, her pale face still beautiful in Zachary's eyes. He sat by her side, holding her hand and brushing her hair aside. Conflicted emotions stirred within him as he stared at her peaceful face. He couldn't understand his feelings. Perhaps it was her clumsiness and fiery spirit that drew him. He regretted the way he had treated her, forcing her into marriage and abusing her. His heart ached with remorse as he kissed her gently, a moment interrupted by Vida's arrival. Embarrassed, Zachary left the room, blaming himself for his actions and worrying about the consequences. Vida, on the other hand, felt triumphant. She believed Zachary was falling in love with Sarah and reported this development to her mysterious boss. Her excitement grew as she realized this could increase her payment. However, the household was soon thrown into chaos when Sarah suddenly went missing. Vida rushed to confirm the news and found Sarah's room empty. Elsewhere, Sarah's mother was lost in memories as she stared at her late husband's prized diamond, locked away for years. The gem had brought nothing but pain, costing her husband's life and tearing the family apart. As she mourned, a sharp pain gripped her stomach, leaving her weak and in distress. Meanwhile, Sarah's friend Phaedra faced her own danger. After being attacked during her evening jog, she woke up tied in a dark, filthy room. Her captor, revealed to be Marshall, demanded her help to convince Sarah to leave Zachary. Marshall's obsession with Sarah was clear, and his threats against Phaedra's mother left her torn between loyalty to her friend and fear for her family. Sarah, oblivious to the chaos around her, sought solace in the garden. Confused and restless, she reflected on her life, feeling a strange sense of displacement. Her thoughts turned to Zachary's unexpected kindness and the kiss they had shared. Though she still feared him, her feelings were beginning to change. To lift her spirits, she sang a song about embracing life and finding happiness. Zachary, watching from the shadows, approached her. Despite her nervousness, she managed to thank him for his recent kindness. Zachary escorted her inside, where they shared an awkward meal. His gaze lingered on her, making her uneasy, but his subtle acts of care hinted at a softer side. However, the moment turned embarrassing for Sarah when Zachary noticed she was stained from her period. Though mortified, she accepted his offer to buy her sanitary pads, unable to stop him. In her room, Sarah struggled with her emotions. Her body ached, and she was overwhelmed by the recent events. Despite everything, she couldn't deny that she was beginning to care for Zachary, but as she battled her feelings, the storm around her life only grew stronger. Sarah was relaxing in her room, playing games on her phone, waiting for Zachary. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was her friend Phaedra, and her panicked voice startled Sarah. Phaedra urgently asked her to come to her aunt's house, and though confused, Sarah quickly got ready. Zachary entered her room carrying shopping bags. Inside, Sarah found sanitary pads and stylish clothes, including an orange gown and silver heels. Thrilled, she dressed up and prepared to leave. Zachary gave her permission and arranged for a driver to take her in a red car. As she walked out, smiling to herself, she couldn't stop thinking about his affectionate gesture. He had pecked her cheek. Meanwhile, Zachary retreated to his room, unable to stop thinking about how beautiful Sarah looked. He called his adoptive mother and apologized for his past mistakes. They spoke briefly about his unresolved issues, including his strained relationship with someone named Eva. Later, Zachary fell asleep and found himself in a dreamlike state, visiting his mystical world. He reunited with his daughter, Sun Jun, but decided she couldn't join him in the human world yet, promising to bring her in 2 days. At Phaedra's aunt's house, Phaedra confided in Sarah, explaining that her life was in danger. A man named Marshall Exdor had kidnapped Phidra's mother and demanded that Phidra deliver Sarah to him within 24 hours. Sarah was stunned, but remained calm. Despite the danger, she reassured Phidra and instructed her to tell Marshall that she accepted his proposal. Returning home, Sarah felt conflicted, but determined. She realized her growing feelings for Zachary and decided it was time to confess. When she arrived, Zachary noticed her unusual quietness. They had a tense conversation where Sarah hesitated to express her emotions. She asked him why he had been so kind to her lately, and he simply said it didn't hurt to be nice. Zachary then revealed his own burden. He had a daughter from a past relationship, and she would arrive in 2 days. He asked Sarah to pretend everything was fine between them and to act as his loving wife for the sake of his daughter. Though surprised, Sarah promised to help. As Zachary dealt with his guilt and past pain, another character, Mary, prepared herself for a visit to his house. Mary was elegantly dressed and confident as she arrived. However, her mood changed when she reached Zachary's doorstep. The person who opened the door was Sarah, casually dressed but undeniably attractive. Mary couldn't hide her displeasure. What was Sarah doing there? The tension grew, leaving all characters entangled in emotions, secrets, and confrontations that would soon unfold. Sarah opened the door to find a woman in a silver gown standing there. She politely asked who she was looking for, but the woman ignored her, rudely shoving past her into the house. Sarah stumbled but quickly regained her composure, shutting the door and following the uninvited guest into the living room. To her shock, she saw the woman warmly hugging Zachary, both smiling as though they had been apart for years. Sarah realized instantly that this must be Mary, Zachary's ex-girlfriend. Mary clung to Zach, chatting and giggling, but Sarah refused to let herself feel intimidated. When Mary finally noticed her, she turned cold. "Who's this?" Mary sneered, pointing at Sarah. Zach hesitated, clearly caught off guard, but before he could respond, Sarah stepped in confidently. "I'm his wife," she declared, smiling sweetly, "and it's quite disrespectful to act this way in someone else's home." Mary's face turned red with anger, and she lashed out with insults, but Sarah remained calm. "You're just his side chick," she said dismissively, standing her ground before walking away upstairs, leaving Mary stunned and furious. Mary, seething, turned to Zach for answers. He tried to calm her down, explaining that he was indeed married to Sarah. Hurt and angry, Mary stormed out of the house and drove off to Ava's place, seeking her help. Meanwhile, Zach couldn't stop thinking about how Sarah had defended herself against Mary. He admired her courage, though he couldn't bring himself to tell her. Alone in his room, he reflected on his past. Zach wasn't an ordinary man. He was an alien who had fled his home planet after a tragic series of events. Years ago, Zach had fallen in love with a woman despite his father's disapproval. Their love led to marriage and a child, but tragedy struck when his father sent assassins to kill his wife. Unable to save her, Zach was left devastated, eventually killing his father in a fit of grief. He fled to Earth, swearing never to love again, as love had only brought him pain. Yet something about Sarah made him feel emotions he thought he had buried forever. At Ava's house, Mary poured out her frustrations, sharing how Sarah had insulted her. Ava, ever cunning, reassured Mary that they would find a way to get rid of Sarah. Together, they began digging into Sarah's past, discovering that she was a singer who had once auditioned at Mary's company, albeit while wearing a mask. Mary saw this as the perfect opportunity to expose and humiliate Sarah. Back at Zach's home, Sarah came downstairs late at night, unable to sleep. She found Zach smoking in the living room, lost in thought. She sat near him, nervous about meeting his daughter for the first time. Despite his cold demeanor, she felt drawn to him. Gathering her courage, Sarah confessed her feelings. "I love you, Zachary," she admitted softly, standing before him. Zach froze, unable to respond. His heart, long shielded by pain and loss, was conflicted. Could he let himself love again, or was he doomed to repeat the tragedy of his past? As Sarah confesses her love to Zachary, a wealthy and powerful man. But Zachary doesn't feel the same, leaving Sarah heartbroken. Things take a darker turn when Mary, a jealous woman, schemes to ruin Sarah's life. Mary even tries to poison her with the help of a housemaid named Vida. At the same time, Mirabella, a friend filled with guilt, comes back, hoping to make up for her mistakes. Sarah later discovers she is pregnant with Zachary's child. Instead of being happy, Zachary shows no interest, which hurts Sarah even more. Then Zachary's daughter Gracie arrives. At first, Gracie doesn't like Sarah, but as they interact, she becomes curious about her. Gracie uses her mysterious powers and discovers something shocking. Sarah isn't entirely human. She tells Zachary, but he brushes it off, although he begins to question Sarah's past when he learns about her connection to a diamond that belonged to her father. Meanwhile, Mary continues her evil plans, sending a spy to harm Sarah. But Gracie steps in, just in time to save her life. As the danger around Sarah grows, so does the mystery of her true identity. Things take a tragic turn when Sarah, hoping to achieve her dreams, auditions for a performance. Mary sabotages her, causing a terrible accident that leaves Sarah with a head injury. Heartbreakingly, Sarah loses her unborn child. This tragedy devastates Sarah and her family. Zachary blames himself for not protecting her, while Sarah becomes emotionally shattered, struggling to trust anyone around her. Secrets about Sarah's past begin to surface, and she realizes that many people around her, including Mary, Marshall, and even her estranged mother, are working against her. Unable to handle the pain and betrayal, Sarah decides to leave Zachary's home. She escapes in the middle of the night, leaving behind a letter apologizing for her actions. With the help of her friend Phaedra, she flees, carrying a stolen diamond as a painful reminder of her past. While on the run, Sarah collapses by a riverbank. She is saved by Opal, who takes her to her father's chambers in another world. Here, Sarah learns the truth about her identity. She is Lady Minjon, a powerful figure from an alien world who was thought to be dead. Her return causes tension in this world, as she discovers she might still be pregnant with Boody's child, a man she once loved but lost. Back in the human world, Gracie uses her powers to try and find Sarah. But her efforts put her in danger, and Zachary teleports her to safety in a forest. However, he is attacked by a mysterious woman. At this moment, Minjon, Sarah, appears. She heals Gracie and finally reveals the truth about her identity. The family reunites in the alien world, where secrets, betrayals, and love come together. The story ends with Zachary, Minjon, and Gracie standing together, symbolizing the power of love and forgiveness. Despite the challenges, Sarah's journey shows resilience, and her family begins to heal from the pain of their past.